Hey everybody, welcome once again to the Poindexter Lounge. My name is Enosh, aka Enosh Fett, and with me as always is the lovely...
Tiff-tastic.
That's right, and we just want to say, welcome neighbors.
Yes.
We're so glad to have each and every one of you here at the Poindexter Lounge. If this is your first time, please know that this is a neighborhood that is safe for you, all right? We are so glad that you are here, and we want you to be involved. If you would, just please hit that subscribe button so that you can be a part of this community. And then also, you know what, since you're here, you might as well hit that notifications button so that you know when we put out new videos, which happens how often, Tiff?
Daily.
That's right.
If not more.
That's right. And so then also, you know what? I know it's been said a million times on every YouTube video, but hey, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up just so that we know that you like it and that you like the content that we put out. And then also, you know what? We just want to have a conversation with you, all right? We would love for you to leave a comment down in the comment section. And then also you can go to Twitter, at Enosh Music, and you can keep the conversation going there. And just tell us what you guys think of the topics that we cover on a daily basis, all right? Well, neighbor, today was pretty emotional.
It was.
We just got back from the movie...
Won't You Be My Neighbor?
Won't You Be My Neighbor? And you know, we do a lot of movie reviews, Tiff.
We do.
And
I'm even donning my own Mr. Rogers sweater.
Yeah.
I just don't have the
zipper.
Nope, I don't have the zipper, but I have my girly touch of my pearls. So,
there you go.
But I'm
Tiffany, we've done a lot of movie reviews over the last few years, and man, this one is different.
It is.
It really is different. This is a documentary. If you don't know what this movie is, this is a documentary about Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yes.
And if you don't know what Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is...
You need to pause our video and go look it up because you've been living under a rock for most of your life.
Mr. Rogers was a guy who had a TV show on PBS, Public Broadcasting, for decades. And his whole thing was telling people to love one another.
Yep.
And to just care for each other, and that he would tell you every week that he loved you
just the way you are.
Just the way you are, and he liked you for just being you. And you know, that's something, Tiffany, that nowadays it sounds kind of cheesy in our world that we live in.
Yeah.
And can come across maybe a little I don't know. I think if we had somebody like Mr. Rogers nowadays, it may even come across as a little less than sincere.
Even though that's all he meant.
But you know, Mr. Rogers, ladies and gentlemen, was such a sincere guy, and loved everybody. And he didn't he wasn't fake.
No.
They actually talk about it in the movie that people asked the crew of
even
the movie.
His two sons, they asked, you know, how is he like, you know, off the set, and they said what you saw is what Dad was, and that's really cool when you can see people like that.
And I love the background of everybody. You know, Mr. Rogers was a very soft-spoken guy on television and everything, but man, that guy challenged so many things. I mean, when I was watching this movie, Tiff, and I'm watching this, you know, these scenes from the 1960s, and they showed one scene, and I'm sorry, there's going to be spoilers. I mean, I don't know if it's spoilers, if it's a documentary. Because
it was about the parts of his life and career, but it's still spoilery if you haven't seen the movie
I guess so, yeah. But hey, you still need to see this movie regardless. But, you know, they're showing racial tensions in the 1960s, and literally African Americans swimming in pools where white people who own those pools are pouring in bleach and detergent, trying to get them out of their pool. And then Mr. Rogers comes right back with a scene where he has an African American policeman on his show, Francois, and I remember Francois. And Mr. Rogers is sitting outside his little fake house there, and he's talking about how hot it is, and he's trying to cool down his feet.
In a little kiddie swimming pool, just with the hose.
Just with a hose, and he invites Francois, this African-American police officer, which Francois talks about how, you know, in the neighborhood that he grew up in, he didn't trust the police and things. And here...
So for him to be one on his show is like a step out of the unorthodox for him.
But he sits there and invites him into this little kiddie pool with him to spray down
Which
their
is
feet
symbolic.
together, which was very symbolic.
On 2 levels, actually.
Yeah, on a couple levels, and we'll get to that in a second. But very symbolic in that little kiddie pool together, black and white, coming together. And then I love it because, and I started to tear up, man. I'm getting a little emotional
Throughout
right now.
the entire movie, there were so many scenes of tearing up.
Francois says, "But Mr. Rogers, I don't have a towel." And Mr. Rogers looks at him and says, "You can use mine."
We'll share.
The world lost a true treasure when we lost Mr. Rogers. And I look at the world that we live in sometimes nowadays, and I echo a lot of the sentiment that, man, we need Mr. Rogers nowadays.
Yeah. It even showed that even when he was in his technically retirement, that he even came out of retirement when 9/11 happened just to do his own thing, just to say, look, now more than ever we need to come together, we need to love our neighbors, we need to, just help each other and get through these things. And it's like, you would hope that the world would want to be better, like he was trying to, push everyone else to be, and that it shouldn't be in these times of turmoil and trouble that he would have to step in and be like, look.
Yeah. Yeah, what a great show. I mean, all the way from back then up until his final shows, Mr. Rogers really showed what it meant to love others. And here's the interesting thing.
And children.
Yes, and children especially. So Mr. Rogers was a lot of things, but he was a ordained minister. And, it made me so sad, and it made me angry too, because a lot of you who watch the show, you may not know this about me, but I'm a pastor. And I talk about it sometimes. I've got videos on the channel that are about that. I don't get preachy and everything when we're talking about Star Wars and Superman and comic books and everything else. But it made me angry to see that at his funeral, the Westboro Baptist people were across the street picketing his funeral simply because Mr. Rogers loved everybody, including, it comes out, Francois, the African-American guy on his show.
That was the police officer.
Was gay. And here's the thing. We all may not agree on everything and about social issues and political issues and
Christian
and all
everything.
That junk, right? But this doesn't change the fact that we can still love one another. I can still love you, and I hope that you can still love me, and that we can show each other decency, common decency as human beings, and come together. And it just made me so angry that somebody so gentle and so loving as Mr. Rogers at his own funeral had people picketing. And they described it just how these people were so angry, and their children
were stressed out, and just you could see the angst on their children because of what their parents were doing and having them hold signs.
And simply because he loved people, no matter if he agreed with their personal beliefs or systems or who they were, lifestyle, whatever, he still loved everybody. And I think that is a lesson, Tiffany, that we can all take and all try to better ourselves. And I love the fact that, just as we were talking about the little kiddie pool, Mr. Rogers, hearkened that to Christ washing the disciples' feet. And for those of you who may not know that story, in the Bible, it talks about how there was a point where Jesus washed his disciples' feet because they were all arguing over who was going to be the greatest among them. And we do that sometimes. We say, I need to be important, and I should be the greatest, and I should be the best, and I should have the best position. And yet here Jesus was
being the servant of all.
Being the servant of all. Oh my goodness. And to see Mr. Rogers take that same kind of stance and that lead from Christ and do that, man.
But it explained that with him having that pastoral background, it's something that he was able to, get the point across. And that was his platform. He didn't have to stand in a pulpit. He didn't have to be preachy. But just in the way that he spoke, just in the way that he engaged the children, the way that he talked to people, that was his preaching for his, what, 1968 to 2001. I mean, he had a long time that he was able to do this, and you could see the passion that he had for children. Every time he met them, that smile on his face, that they'd be sitting there doing their thing, and he was literally just like staring at them, and that admiration and awe that he had. It just showed his passion for life and for people.
What a great guy, and what a great movie.
It's funny how just a simple song, or it's just like all of a sudden it's like, it gets you in the feels. Your heart starts fluttering, and you're like, you want to sing along with it. It reminds you of your childhood, at least mine. And it was one of those things that it's just amazing how just some words, some phrases, some music, it makes you just like, oh man, I remember, and it like takes you back.
Yeah. For those of you who haven't seen it, I have a show that I do periodically here on the channel because I'm a musician, called This Is My Story, This Is My Song. And I usually do these little bumper intros, funny intros when I do the show. It's been a while since I've done one, but I usually try to do these funny little intros. And one of the intros that I did, and I'll put a link to it in here, is I did a little Mr. Rogers bumper intro. So the music starts and like
trolley.
Yeah, well, I didn't have the trolley, but just like he had his little toy neighborhood and everything, I panned and filmed all of my Star Wars toys and everything, and then all of a sudden I come walking in the door and I take off my sweater and I do the whole thing. Nice. But Mr. Rogers was truly an inspiration, and I hope that I find it very fitting that his whole entire platform was based on being a neighbor, being a good neighbor.
being an avid speaker at graduation ceremonies.
Yeah,
I mean, what's a better just way to set your children off into going to college and what they want to do with their lives than having Mr. Rogers be the person that gives their speech.
But like I said, just his whole platform of being a good neighbor. And as a Christian myself, I'm reminded of the words of Jesus, right? To be a neighbor. When we say, who is my neighbor?
Everyone.
Everyone is our neighbor.
And love your neighbor as yourself. That's
love
how
your neighbor
he
as
was
yourself. Truly
the epitome of that.
Yeah. So, hey, I will just tell you this: if this movie isn't playing everywhere, but wherever you are,
highly recommend finding it wherever you are.
Look this movie up, find out where it is,
and bring
go
some
see
Kleenex.
It. Oh my goodness! And bring some people with you.
Even if you haven't been our age, because honestly, we went in there and we were the youngest couple. Yeah. Believe it or not, in this movie, which I thought was awesome, but you still had, our age, older, just in between, and it's like we're all laughing at the same things. We're all, when the song started and he snaps his fingers, you heard people in the back that, which means they're older than us that were doing that. But it's also my children who technically are millennials, and it's like they're younger, they're, under 20, and yet my kids, I still raise them on watching Mr. Rogers. So it's a generational thing that I think is so cool.
I think it's cool to see the kids all the way back from way back then, from the 50s and 60s when he got his start. And then now there's videos here on YouTube where it shows them showing kids nowadays Mr. Rogers videos. And it doesn't matter
and it rings
what
true
time. They're still mesmerized by it, and they say the same thing.
They said, "Well, what do you think of Mr. Rogers? How do you feel when you see this?"
Yeah.
And the little kids are like, "He's a nice man. He wants to help," and that's like our children now. This is something that I want to continue on. And then the one thing I thought was very interesting. It's something you've mentioned to me in job interviews I've had in the past and things that you've gone through in your professional career. Is he really was, and I didn't think about it until they showed it in the video, was you've got all these shows that are like, speed racer where it's like, haha, and everything's got to be so fast and colorful and cartoons. And what did he do? He just sat there feeding his fish.
Slow everything down.
He'd sit, and he says, you know what, and then if there was silence, I'd sit there and I'd look and then wait for them to talk, because that's what's going to make someone else talk more and open up. And sometimes all you need is silence. You don't need everything going a mile a minute. It was just, let's feed the fish here. We're going to make a pie. So you would tape him turning that crank just to get the skin off the apple that may take, even just having them take the egg timer and be like, you want to see how long a minute is? And he put the egg timer on, and they waited an entire minute without talking.
Yeah.
That's I don't even think our kids today could do that.
Unheard of.
Sorry, guys, I don't think you can.
But just just an amazing time that we had tonight, and just
more emotional than I anticipated it
reflective and emotional, and also
more so for me than even The Price of Fame. Another documentary. So see, we don't just watch superheroes and nerd shows, and we like documentaries too.
Like I said, very introspective, and made me look at my own life, and very much, I like looking at things from my childhood, and watching stuff from my childhood, and that's what it was. So Tiff,
yes,
I have to ask you. I don't know why I'm asking you, but I have to. This is what we do. This is how we do it.
This is how we do it.
On a scale of 1 to 5, Tiff, 1 being that it was a horrible movie, and 5 being that it was the best movie ever. What do you give it?
I will actually give it a 5. If I could go any higher than that, I would, because it's my childhood idol. I loved Mr. Rogers. I loved hearing his stories. He talked about things that, he talked about divorce. He talked about death. He talked about assassination. It was everything that everyone else would not talk about. He talked about, because he wanted to make sure that the kids in our world understood how to handle that. We don't have shows like that anymore, and I don't see us having anyone else like that anymore for our children.
So many things that we think kids can't handle, or that
comprehend or understand,
or they can't understand, and Mr. Rogers transcended that and went ahead and talked about those things, and it made a difference.
And it wasn't something just to make, shock factor. I mean,
yeah,
it was amazing how it made me tear up just hearing this little tiny tiger puppet talking to Lady Aberline, and she's blowing up a balloon for him, and he's like, "What does the word assassination mean?" And even she was just like, I know she was acting, but it was like the look on her face was like, "Oh, have you heard that today,
Lady Aberline? Am I a mistake too?"
Oh my gosh!
Oh my
that
goodness.
one always made me tear up.
Oh my goodness! Oh,
so
I will say I give
this movie a 5.
It is so good. Go see this movie,
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen. If you have seen this movie, will you please?
What do you think?
Please leave a comment down in the comment section, or go to Twitter at Enosh Music, and let us know what you thought of this movie. Tell us your Mr. Rogers memories.
Or is there anything that you realize on certain people that maybe were not interviewees that you thought maybe should be there or shouldn't be there?
Where was Lady Aberline?
That's what I was trying to find online.
I am
before
so
this.
looking that up online now, because they had Mr. McFeely.
There's a couple of different things that they're saying, but I don't know if it's hearsay or if it's actual fact. So she is still alive. Maybe we could find something out.
I thought maybe she had passed. I said that to you. I was like, where is she?
And she is technically, she's alive.
We got to do some research, ladies and gentlemen.
So all your comments, anything, if you guys know where she's at, or why, if she made any statements on why. Just because, she was a big part of that show for so long.
Huge part.
Lady Aberline.
She was in every episode, man.
She was in the make-believe world with him.
Oh, I know.
So,
but hey, we want to hear from you, so please leave a comment there. And like I said, we're just so glad that you've joined us today. And we hope that you are a good neighbor to those that you are around on a daily basis, all right?
Get comfortable, put on a cardigan.
That's right. Until next time, we just want to say, it's you we like. Every part of you, all right? Thanks for joining us. Until next time.